A wildflower area is a great way to encourage more wildlife into the garden, and it's that easy. It's easy to look after. One way to make the wildlife easier to see and enjoy is to plant wildflowers in a raised bed. That way you have less bending and stooping when you want to take a close look or even do a bit of photography. We've created a raised bed here, and we're going to use Meadowmat wildflower matting to get our wildflowers off to a good start. The three things to remember when building a raised bed for wildflowers, I'm going to call them the 3 S's. It's size, soil type and sunshine. When it comes to making a planter for wildflowers, the only dimension that really matters is depth. As you can see, this raised bed is quite large, but it wouldn't matter if it was much smaller. What is important is that the plants have plenty of room to sink their roots deep into the soil. 15 centimetres is the bare minimum you should aim for. Remember too, the shallower the soil, the more risk there is of it drying out in the summertime. So if you're aiming for a water-wise garden, build your raised bed as deep as you possibly can. Now, this is important. Ordinary garden soil is just too rich for wildflowers. They've adapted to living where the soil hasn't ever been enriched with compost or fertilisers. This bed has been filled with low nutrient topsoil. It's been specially blended to create exactly the right conditions for most wildflowers. It costs slightly more than a garden soil, but it does mean that we have the best possible chance of getting our wildflowers to grow really well. We're going to be growing sun-loving wildflowers in this bed. Things like cornflower, oxeye daisies, bird's foot trefoil, wild carrot and vetch, and so we placed it where we know the sun will be on it most of the day. If your raised bed is going to be in shade for more than half the day, be very careful to choose shade-tolerant plants to grow in it. So here's our wildflower raised bed, ready to be planted with wildflower seed, wildflower plants or Meadowmat wildflower matting. I've gone to the trouble of doing a raised bed. These boards are quite handy because they spread the weight. I'm about to plant some Meadowmat wildflower matting in it, but before we do, I'm going to place some spring flowering bulbs on top of the soil. Here's a nice selection of bulbs. These native snowdrops should push through the Meadowmat and spring into life as early as February. We're going to plant some of these little snowdrops in. Tiny little bulbs, lovely little things. Just anywhere, irregular, is great. And then we can put some other mixed bulbs in, making sure that, of course, the roots are in the ground. Put them up the right way. It helps if roots are pointing the right way because they can get to the soil beneath. Now you notice I'm not actually pushing them right in very, very deep because we're going to put some of this wildflower Meadowmat on top and they'll be able to push themselves through. And also we need to have the wildflower Meadowmat done in a way so we can enjoy those flowers. So we don't need loads and loads of bulbs in. About 10 a square metre, I reckon. This is Meadowmat wildflower mat. As you can see, it has a layer of soil already in it, and that's what's going to cover our bulbs. If you've not seen Meadowmat before, it's a bit like turf, but instead of lawn grasses, it has wildflower plants. As you can see here, that even though the plants aren't very tall, they are all different shaped leaves. These roots look pretty solid at the moment, but they will untangle and push down into the soil and make room for the bulbs to push the leaves up. So we put the bulbs down. This is Meadowmat, as we said a moment ago, and it just simply unrolls and goes on top of those bulbs there. All these roots will loosen up and then they'll pop their head through and they'll look fantastic in the spring. There we go. Okay, so if you do have to trim any, you can use a sharp knife. Obviously be careful with anything that's sharp. I'm using a standing knife here. Or you could just use an old wood saw. And that's it equally as well. The mat is heavy, so it might be a good idea to get somebody to help you lift it. So there we have it. We'll lay out another roll and we'll carry on doing that and finish the job off. And we'll come back in the springtime to have a look at those bulbs and how it all looks in flower. Thank you for looking.